All right, welcome to another episode of Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. Dai-Shihan Miller here from Warrior Concepts. Of course, you already know that. And onlineninjaacademy.com. It's right down there at the bottom. Anyway, all right, so this week we're going to take a look at Kamae again, but we're going to take a look at this from the perspective of perceptual traps or perception traps. The theme this week that we started during the podcast on Monday was focused on transforming or transmuting weaknesses, internal weaknesses, right, our own, into strengths. Okay, so I thought it was only fitting that we take a look at the weaknesses in Kamae, or at least the perceived weaknesses in Kamae. Okay, and again, this can run pretty deep, and this ties in with last week's theme on Kyusho, right? These vital or critical points, often seen as weak points, right? And a lot of people tend to translate these things as actual pressure points, right? So pain compliance, those kind of things. But over last week and even into last night's class with my masterclass, we took a look at Kyusho or weak points that the attacker has that he doesn't know he has, okay? Based on arm reach and angles and timing and all kinds of things, right? Did we take a look at some actual, Kyusho on the body? Yeah, okay. But the focus last week was not worrying about pain compliance, right? How about if I could attack these vital points, these Kyusho, and pain would be a bonus. It'd be like icing on the cake, not the reason we're doing it. Okay, because some people they can't feel pain. Okay, anyway, so back onto this week, right? What we're going to be doing is taking a look at turning weakness into strategic control, because Kamae, being a part of Ninjutsu, we have to go back to this initial premise, or like one of the core premise within Ninjutsu, which is that nothing in this system is what it looks like. Okay, and that's the trap, right? Because human beings, our minds are wired to process what we see, what we hear, what we feel, what we taste, touch, and accept reality or form our sense of reality based on that. Okay, and he's going to do the same thing based on where your limbs are, based on those kind of things, right? And so that's part of it. The other part of it is that when we take in input, it gets processed through a pre-existing lens, a pre-existing filter, right? Like if my glasses were yellow tinted or they were blue tinted or whatever, everything that I look at is going to have that tint. So the real colors of things are going to be skewed, right? But see, I'm going to think that things look like whatever, okay? And what I mean by that is depending on that person's fight style, experience, belief system about how you're supposed to fight, what the official way is, the styles that they've learned or whatever, they're going to run that. They're going to run whatever they see through that, and then they're going to base their future decisions on that, beginning with whether or not you look like you know what you're doing, okay, or whether what you are, however things are positioned, right, it looks like bullshit, okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with these three mistakes, but let me jump into, or let me just shift to my notes here, because if I don't do that, then I might miss something important that I don't want to miss for you guys. Okay, so again, Kamae's perception traps, turning weakness into strategic control. What we're really going to look at is why fighters from other systems misread ninjutsu, and if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, end up losing because of it. And if we do it right, they don't know why they lost, okay? Because the loss didn't happen because we beat their ass. It happened all the way back to their translating what they see, because that's going to turn into decisions, that's going to turn into actions, and those actions are laden with mistakes, those kind of things, right? So just like when I tell students in the dojo, when they make a mistake, or when a problem occurs in a technique and they're trying to fix that problem, and I keep telling them that's not the problem, okay? I know that that's what the problem looks like. I know that that's what the problem feels like. I know that's where the confusion is coming from. But the problem came a move or two, or before, even before that thing. What ends up happening is the technique or whatever you're trying to do hits a bottleneck because the angling wasn't right, the timing wasn't right, assumptions weren't right, or more often than not, the student decided what they were going to do before he ever threw anything. And then based on the variables that are going on, and they're not paying attention and adjusting to those things on the fly, right? Then, right? Then shit doesn't work out. Okay. Be kind of like getting instructions from somebody. I'm going to hop in my car and I'm going to drive to a certain point. The person goes, "Oh yeah. Just drive straight down that way." Right. And yeah, you'll come right to it. Right. So I hop in my car and I don't do anything to adjust the steering wheel. I just drive in a straight line. Now I know how simple that sounds and I know how weird that sounds or funny that it sounds. But often that's what people do, where they make an assumption up front and then they carry out things based on that assumption. They're not really paying attention to what's going on. What they're paying attention to is their cool moves, what they want to do, that kind of thing, right? And there's also this other little thing going on with conventional fighters, and that is that they tend to play this game called willing to take one to get one. So they're willing to take a shot as long as they can get theirs in. And the guy who delivers more hits, more whatever, can take more damage than the other one, whatever, that's the winner. Well, that's a damn contest, okay? But if we're coming at this from a survival scenario, okay, dark alley, me against 2, 3, 4, 5 gangbangers, whatever, on a battlefield, okay, you don't have time to be clanging swords together and whatnot. You got to finish this in as few moves as possible and then move on to the next because there's always a next one, right? And if you don't, you hang out too long, this guy's friend whacks my friend and then very quickly just stabs me and then they run off to find 2 new victims or 2 new targets or 2 new opponents or whatever, okay? So there's a huge difference, right? So anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to start with these 3 mistakes. As far as where people are coming from, I did say why fighters from other systems misread ninjutsu. Yeah, I have a spot in here for us as well. Okay, so just to kind of set the tone, right? I've got a quick quote from you here. It's kind of adapted from Hatsumi Sensei's just general teachings across the board. Okay, and that is that form is not the truth. Okay, the form is not the truth. I don't care if the form is the kamae, the kata, whatever, okay? The form is not the truth. It's the bait, okay? It's the deception. What I say earlier, nothing in ninjutsu is what it looks like, okay? So, again, the central premise here is that in ninjutsu, we don't take kamae. We create situations through them, okay? They begin the process of manipulation. But again, it's not just the kamae are the physical form of what's going on in our head and our heart, intention, strategic planning, those kind of things, right? And based on how we're translating what he's doing, okay? So what we're really looking at here are hidden strengths disguised as vulnerabilities, okay? And so when he misreads your kamae, right, he opens the door for his own downfall. One of the lessons that attracted me most in the very, very beginning, even before I put a white belt on in this system, was that the ninja wins before the battle even starts. And that requires a whole lot of knowledge, setup, and control of the situation where he believes certain things are true, but that's not what's happening. Okay? You can call them distractions, you can call them tricks, you can call them whatever, right? But this is about setting things up way ahead of time, okay? So if we can set things up in a way where the battle never takes place, that'd be awesome. But see, we talk about that stuff during Kuden podcast. Once we get here, we realize that physical things are going to happen. So this is the juice, right? This is the strategy, the tactics, the principles and concepts behind the physical techniques and actions and whatnot, right? So that's Friday Masterclass, right? That's what we'll do here in a couple of days, okay? So let's jump into this. Let's take a look at 3 mistakes that most fighters make. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to generalize fighter types by giving them a couple of names, all right? So if you have done or are doing these arts or these fight styles, don't get your nuts all in a twist. Okay. This is a generalization. Are there exceptions to the rule? Well, hell yes, there's always exceptions to the rule. Okay. And you may be the most enlightened fighter that ever existed while you're watching my stuff, maybe other than to critique it and leave a bullshit comment in the sections or whatever. I don't know. Right. I've had people that come in that, bragged about everything that they do. Right. My number one question to them is, why do you want to be doing this? If you're already that good, why do you want to be doing this? Other than ego wanting to have a black belt in ninjutsu or another black belt so that you can add that to the bragging list, why do you want one in this list, in this system? Okay. So what we're going to do is the objective to this is to deconstruct the flawed lens that fighters bring from other systems. Okay. Including when people come from other systems into this one, right? I did it, right? So I have intimate experience and knowledge about what kind of problems that causes. Okay, so we're gonna take a look at three, right? Again, I'm just generalizing here, right? So the first one I'm gonna take a look at is the Taekwondo Karate Guy. Okay, certain types of karate, right? So what I'm talking about are the speed guys, right? So there's this bounce rhythm that goes on, that kind of thing. And even if their feet don't leave the ground, they're more of a low fighter. There's still this kind of, right? Because they got to stay light on their feet so they can deliver those fast kicks. Okay. All good. Okay. As long as it works against the attacker or the opponent that you're dealing with, shit, have at it. Okay. But these folks, they tend to see our Kamae, especially Ichimonji, right? They see the Kamae as too low, too slow. I've actually seen, well, you know what? I'll save that for down here. Okay. And so what ends up happening is there's like this deception kind of thing going on, right? What ends up happening is they miss the structural readiness and the use of angle over agility because these folks tend to fight nose to nose, toe to toe. So it's a two-dimensional fight. Okay, the ninja are fighting three or more dimensions. As a matter of fact, coming from our Mikyo stuff, we are fighting from 10 dimensions. Not one, not two, 10. Most of those are in here and in here. Okay, and so that's not like woo-woo stuff. Okay, that's how we process things and the different levels that things are on. Okay, all right. But they tend to see that the Kamae is too low to be agile. Okay, so we're gonna take a look at these as we move across, and then we're gonna take a look at what the strengths are, as long as we're not making certain mistakes. Okay, so the Taekwondo karate guy, especially the kicker, right, or the speed guy, right, that wants to jump in and get that kind of thing happening. Okay, we're just too low, right? They tend to be higher on things. Okay. The boxer, we'll call him boxer, striker, that kind of thing, right? The guy that likes the jabs and the uppercuts and the right crosses and all that, powerhouse hits, those kind of things, right? All this stuff works, okay? So I'm not here to say that these things don't work, okay? What we're pointing out are the mistakes in perceptions and how they perceive weakness, right? And you don't have to believe me, just go to any ninjutsu practitioner who's doing videos, Ramki or anybody, right? And go down through the comments, right? And look at all the people that point out how certain things are bullshit or I'd attack that or okay? And then take note of that because they're telling you, right, what they see and how they process things, which is very, very important, okay? If we don't know what they see and how their perception or how they're perceiving things, right, we can't turn their perceptions into traps, or we can't see how the Kamae and the techniques that we're learning already turn those perceptions into traps. Okay. In Hatsumi Sensei's book, Ninpo Wisdom for Life, there's a section in there on something like inferiority complexes and things like that. But there's a statement in there, or there's a section in there where they talk about, or he talks about every system, right, has its secrets, right? And way back in the day, you had all these, within Budo, you had all these clans and all these systems, and we call them yuha, right? martial lineages, they all had their own secrets. There were a lot of generalizations. There were a lot of ways that things crossed over because the armor was similar, the landscape, footwear, all that kind of stuff, right? But there's a statement in there that he makes that ultimately what it comes down to was a battle of secrets, a battle between secrets. Okay. Those who had the secrets that were actually stronger and more powerful lasted into today's world. Right? Those who didn't died out. And there's a shit ton of families that died out, literally. Okay, died out. Right. So, but with this person here, right? I'm going to get rid of some of this stuff here. Okay, so the boxer striker, when they look at the Kamae, right, or when they're trying to do it, okay, so they tend to see this as too closed in, right? Because they're used to this kind of stuff, right? And it's out, but this is all closed in, and then it looks problematic. Okay, people that cross over from this into this system or have tried it, right, automatically start modifying things. Okay, and one of those modifications is because they came from a boxing striking background, they tend to hunch their shoulders and get in here just like everybody else. But what that does is it lowers the shielding. Right? This is supposed to, or they'll lift it up so they can still, right? The problem with this is that if he attacks your arms, you're gonna punch yourself in the face. Okay? This thing in front of the face didn't exist during the bare knuckle fighting eras long before. When did gloves start to come about? 30s, 40s, give or take, right? Before that, 1900s, before, and we're not. It doesn't matter if we're talking about like European or the Fighting Irish kind of stuff, where it's like this or whatever. You look at those old bare knuckle boxers. These guys learned very, very early. You don't put your freaking knuckles and bones in front of your face. All you have to do is punch your own arm, and you give yourself a fat lip or a black eye or whatever. Okay, so this is keeping things down so that your own weapons can't be used against you. They're also not projected out. There's a range thing going on, but one of the biggest things is this hunched shoulder kind of thing, and it drops this. It drops the X. Okay. The other thing that people do is they tend to go more comfortable because they didn't learn that lesson about the knuckles, the weapons, the working edge, the working end of the weapon. Okay. And so what they do is they'll cross their arms, right? Because it's just more comfortable. It's just more comfortable. Okay. And so what ends up happening is the knuckles are now pointing up instead of out. Okay. So yes, during times when armor was around, you wanted to maximize pointing the armor at them. Okay. So that gave you more shielding and whatnot. But you already have natural armor. Okay. If he attacks my arms this way, right, where my knuckles are pointing that way, he's hitting across broad meat. Okay. Does it hurt? Yeah, but we're pretty tough out here. Okay. As soon as we do this, that sensitive bone is now lined up with his knuckles. Okay. And our radial bone lines up with his ulna. So if he punches or kicks my arms, I can batter these things together. Okay. You take this off because I just punched into those little beads, which would be really freaking stupid, right? Now, if I do this, that's not an issue. Okay. So they do this. But if this guy throws a kick and kicks my arms and kicks my arm back, I'm going to punch myself in the eye. So one of the first things I learned when I made these mistakes, because I came from those fight systems. Okay. And the teachers were like, you keep the working edge of your weapon always pointing at him, not at you. If he kicks my arms, it's flatter. There's less stuff. And based on the way the shoulders work, it's not going to come back at you. Okay. So we don't want to expose the ulna, the radial bones, those kind of things to strikes. We don't want to be lining ourselves up so that if he grabs or whatever and shoves things back and we tense up, he can't bang the radius against the or the radial bone against the ulna, right? And then again, knuckles being pointed, that'd be like picking up a gun and pointing the hammer at him and the muzzle, or walking around with it this way, right? somebody surprises you. Right? You see this in movies. You're walking around this way, right? Somebody jumps out and surprises the shit out of you. You go, and your finger blow the freaking top of your head off. You keep the muzzle pointing at him. You don't go walking around like Joe Cool actor in a movie that's probably never handled a gun in his entire life, except for movie props. Okay? So just dumbass mistakes. Okay? All right. So while these can cross over, right? Let's talk about ninjutsu practitioners. We're going to talk about ourselves. Well, we're going to talk about those of us, me included, who had to get over things, who either because we trained in other styles, or we watched movies, or we watched other fighters, or all of our experience comes out of watching The Ring, right? And how those people fight, right? One of the things I covered last night, we were attacking the eye. And one of the statements I made is that most fighters have never been punched in the eye. And most people were like, that's not right. Right? I mean, I had a black eye. And no. That's not what I said. I didn't say that you get punched in the eye region. Right? But you can't fit that in your eye socket. Right? And then with gloves on, most people have never been punched in the eye. We were taking a shitan ken and punching the eyeball. Okay? That's not the same thing. If I want to shut down somebody much faster, I'm not going to punch him in all the areas that he's used to getting punched in. I'm going to punch him someplace that when that little orb pops, he's going to fucking panic. Hope that doesn't get me kicked off YouTube. Anyway, right? So let's start just up in here. Okay? I have seen people that have come from this school, right, who have shortened up their footwork or the distance between their feet, right, so that in Ichimonji, they can be doing this and they can be faster, okay? And they'll flat out tell you, there's videos all over the place, right, that the traditional thing doesn't work. It's not fast enough. It's too low or whatever. But if you look at their kamae, their hips and feet are not lined up where they're supposed to be. Their weight distribution on their legs, not what it's supposed to be, right? So, of course, they're never going to be fast, but they don't understand what it's used for. And if they're thinking in terms of like, how do I, right? They're trying to process this through that lens. Same thing with this. This is this guy. Okay. Or I've seen people say, well, I don't do it like this, right? I do it like this, right? Or I do it like this, right? Except this starts to open up a hole. Okay. Right? This is too restrictive, right? So okay. So all the things that these guys say about the kamae, because they came from that thing, okay, they already have a leg up. If you came from another martial art, right, whatever you thought initially or still think about our kamae and their weaknesses, and well, see, that was in the old days, and so people fight differently today. Yes, they do. Okay, it's our job to understand how this stuff translates to that. Not, how about if we just, because Hatsumi Sensei made lots of adaptations and Takama Sensei made adaptations to things as things changed. But those kamae modifications were made based on the modern fight styles. If they were going to change it so that we're going to fight like everybody else, I'm pretty sure that's how we'd be doing it in the dojo. Okay. But it's a misunderstanding, right? Not from the teacher, from the student. Okay. So we have to get over ourselves. So all of these little things get carried over, okay? But these folks, right, if they're still viewing kamae, right, kamae as stances. We've got a whole Whiteboard Wednesday on how kamae are not stances and why, right down to the translation, the definition, where each of these things, where a kamae gets its name from, where a dachi gets its name from, right? It's just, if they're translating it this way, that's already problematic, right? Because they're thinking about it being a static thing or that it's a style position, right? This is an official style thing, okay? They could end up being a blind follower of the system, right? So they trust the shape and they just assume that it's solid and whatever, right? But they don't understand the strategy behind the shape. Okay, they don't understand where the shape comes from. Okay, and the biggest thing that I talked about earlier is that they're neglecting this stuff. Okay, they're neglecting to study or figure out what the attacker's perception is when that attacker sees that Kamae. Okay, and that in and of itself is a critical failure. Critical failure. We're taught how these things work and how to do them in techniques, and we get to trust those things and all that, right? We look in the mirror, we make sure we're doing it right and all that. But if you don't look in the mirror and ask yourself, if I were facing somebody in that Kamae, how would I beat that? Because all the systems have that. Okay. Gyokoryu's way of doing uke nagash, right, catches Gyokoryu's method of punching. Gyokoryu, when it punches, is protecting itself against the way Gyokoryu will do certain types of uke nagash. There are reasons that the hand is here, which is defense against Gyoko's own counter strike. Hand going here, defense against Koto type catching and dragging the skeleton kind of thing, right? So, but if we don't understand what they see, right? Everybody that I've ever sparred with, or we had a little back and forth about Kamae, right? I get the Ichimonji, and they're like, "Well, that's fucking stupid, man." Okay, your arm is exposed. I can grab that. I can kick it. I can hit it. Your leg, that's still way too far out there. That's easy to sweep. Right now, have I had that happen? Oh, yeah. My first little sparring match with a Taekwondo guy when I was stationed with the Army in South Korea a bunch of years ago. Yeah, that didn't go well for me. Okay? Because I was trying to do that. Yeah? I didn't understand the difference. Right? I saw it as the same, and I got my ass handed to me. Okay? So we need to understand that Kamae must be active, not performative, right? It's not a performance. It's not a pose. It's not a launch. It's just not just a cannon for launching techniques from. Okay. And Kamae is an attack. From its very base, Kamae is an attack. Because as soon as you take it up, it starts controlling his perceptions. He starts deciding what he's going to do. Okay. So we can't not be thinking about that. Okay. So again, when somebody comes from these, if they're making this mistake, it kind of warps things. But what do these guys see, right? So we have to be careful. Okay, we have to be careful, right? So let's take a look at some strategic interpretations of key Kamae. Okay, strategic interpretations. We only have so much time, so we're just going to do three. We're going to do Ichimonji, Jumonji, and Hitta. Okay, and when I say Hitta, I mean the Kukushinden Hitta that most people know, not the Gyokoryu version, which most of us call Shizen, or the Kotoryu Hitta Ichimonji, which is the one with the leg up. Okay, so it's not the same. Okay, so Ichimonji, some people call it Seigan, or some lineages call it Seigan. In Kukushinden school, it's Katate Hicha no Kamae, whatever. Okay, so we just have these things, right? So we just look at them very, very quickly from the other fighter looking at it, okay? So from a perceived weakness perspective, right, this overextended arm and leg, right, as targets, okay, as targets. They're easy targets, okay? So we'll take a look at the hidden strengths here in a minute, but they're targets if we don't understand them. Okay. There's always the yin and yo of things going on. Okay. Yin and yo is the Japanese way of saying yin and yang. Right. So both things can be true at the same time. Right. So it's true that this is a weakness and that leg sticking way out there is a weakness if we're doing the Kamae incorrectly, if we're using it incorrectly. Right. So does that mean we're supposed to shorten it up? Does that mean we need to modify it so that he can't get at it? No. I want him to get at it. Okay, I want him to do that. Okay, please, by all means, go for it. Okay. Do I want to do the strategic interpretation now, or do I want to hold that off until Yeah, well, we'll do it now. Yeah, let's just do it now. Okay. So, but when we look at this, right, the lead side, okay, acts in two ways. Okay. Lead side. One, it's a feint. I don't mean a feint like a psych out, that kind of thing. I mean, it's bait. Okay. Please come at it. Now, omote, from the omote side, from the form side, we are creating situations with our kamae with rare exceptions. Hitta, all the Hitta Ichimonjis, right? This way, this way, this way, right? Shizen. We're positioned in a way where they have to punch over or under or attack over or under at least one limb, which makes blocking, I hate that word, much easier, right? Get shit in your eye, flinch response, whatever. If they have to cross that line, then even if you're surprised, that flinch response is going to create that ukedome, normally translated as a block or whatever. Okay, but it's a feint in that, right, he has to deal with it. He either has to go around it or he has to try to move it or attack it in some way. Okay, and it's a measuring tool. Okay. In most martial arts that I've ever been in, the body is used for distancing and the limbs are used for power. Okay? It's backwards in taijutsu. In taijutsu, the limbs are used for measuring, the body is used for power. Okay? It's not the same. So what I'm doing is I'm not just gauging how far away he is, I'm disrupting his ability to see how far away my targets are. And the other thing I'm doing with this is hiding the length of my weapon. Okay. Now, you've just seen me sideways, so you know how long my arm is. But when I put that on his eye line, he can't see how long my arm is. Okay. If he doesn't know how the length of the weapon, he can't make proper judgment or proper decisions about how close he can get, where things are, that kind of thing. Okay. It's the same with sword, same with spear, it's the same. Okay. So if he doesn't know where that is, then it's all the same. Even in the more compressed kamae, like Jumonji no kamae, this angle is very, very important because it distorts arm length. As soon as I do this, he can now gauge arm length. Right? I also create a different kind of target. Okay. So it's a feint and it's a measuring tool. Okay. It also allows for quick off-angle evasion or trapping, okay? Because I'm on one line. It's easy to change that angle and to be able to slip my arm under his as he's coming in or over it, as opposed to having to reach for it, right? And again, it disrupts the rhythm of the bounce reactive systems, okay? Because I'm here, right? He's bouncing around. If I'm not bouncing, then he can't time when to throw his kick because I'm about to jump up or I'm sinking down. He can't plan that out because I'm stable, right? There's a couple other things that go on here with this lead side, okay? And this goes, it goes with the measuring device, but this is where the deception happens, okay? It positions me closer, okay, without putting my targets closer. The hell does that mean? Okay? It means that wherever my front foot is, that determines which foot I need to step with to get him, how far I have to step, those kind of things, right? So if I step, okay, one, I'm a target. I can't maneuver out of this space until my foot touches the ground to move in a different direction, okay? Even guys who, kick and then change that kick direction, their body stays in the same space and time, okay? The other thing is that my foot's right here. So he sees where my arms are, he sees where my hands are, okay? If my targets are right there with that foot, then that's exactly where I am, okay? But when I sink and project that leg out, if you're in for class on Friday, most of you know Ichimonji, as long as you haven't distorted things, right? Low and out, right? It's way out in front of me, but it should never go out farther than my lead hand, right? My elbow should be over my knee, my hand should be over my foot, but my weight distribution is what matters because I need to be able to pull the foot without moving the torso first, okay? Lesson 1 in Kamae is if you have to move your torso to step or kick, you have to move it first to step or kick, your Kamae is wrong. That's not what I was told. I was told my Kamae sucks. Okay, so it positions me closer, and what that means is he's looking at my targets and how far he needs to go, but I'm really much closer because I can travel to my lead foot without having to take a step. Okay, there's a bunch of cool things that are going on in here. Okay, and again, the deception. The deception here is that the arm can be attacked, the leg can be swept. Only if my weight is on them and only if this is locked. Okay? This is disconnected and there's a hovering going on. These things only ever lock down when I'm doing that strike and I go back to being relaxed. So this is hovering. So when he goes to grab for something, it's easy to move that away. And if he does grab it, I don't have to relax anything to initiate the grab escape. It's already there, okay? And if my weight distribution is right, 70% or more of my weight is on my back leg, then, so you're seeing my torso move a little bit, but I'm not moving to move my leg. It drifts as the leg is picked up because the core is tight. Yep, I have those, okay? I have a six-pack. You just can't see it, okay? So it looks like, did I just misspell deception? That's just stupid. That's what I get for learning Japanese, which, deception. There we go. Okay. So it looks like, okay? And it's there if I need it, but if he attacks it, it's easy to move, okay? You go from Ichimonji through Hicho, and you snap that sweeping leg. Or you pull it and then get behind it, right? So you're now behind him, which is a huge primary combat principle of the Gyokuryu. Circle behind the bad guy. Okay? So it looks one thing, or one way, right? But there's a whole bunch of other things going on. Okay? All right. Let's switch to Jumonji. I'm probably going to run out of room and have to erase, but you guys can always go back and take green screenshots and whatnot. Okay, so let's look at Jumonji. Right? Perceived weakness. We already talked about this, right? Weird arms. Weird arms, right? Who the fuck does that? Right? Who fights like that, right? That's not a guard. That looks odd, right? You're just doing that fantasy martial arts bullshit. Okay? But the strategic truth here is that the Xshaped Shield, right? When it's there correctly, when it's not dropped, when people aren't down here like this, okay? That X shape, okay? This creates 4 equilateral triangles. See them? 1, 2, 3, 4. When it's proper, when the elbows are covering the floating ribs, butsumetsu, and the fists are covering these points up here, okay? You don't want to get in the brachial plexus, and you don't want to get it down here. This disrupts breathing. This causes either, this is part of Godin, right? So this either shuts down or creates a diaphragmatic spasm, which means you can't breathe, right? Or it attacks the organs directly, and your system starts shutting down, okay? So it does that, but what it does is it creates 4 equal openings, and no one is better than the other, even in Hitta Jumonji. Okay, Hitta Jumonji is way deceptive because, like, okay, they can accept this one, right, where you're kind of stacked, but as soon as you turn this way and you're in this Hitta Jumonji, are you covered? Is your groin open? Right, creates some confusion there, except for the jackasses that just make a snap decision and come charging in, which is awesome. Okay, but okay, we're creating 4 equilateral triangles, which means that it doesn't matter which way he comes from. right? It's easy to block. I cover those areas. But what people do is they'll get all relaxed, or they'll do knuckles up, and so now I don't have 4 equilateral triangles that are all the same size, right? And it positions my fists so they're not in front of my throat, not in front of my face, anything like that, right? It now closes off 2 of those options and creates bigger windows, high and low. Okay, so the feeling, one of the strategic ideas behind Jumonji is whatever you throw at me is I'm okay, right? Whatever you throw at me, I'm okay with that. Do as you choose. Okay, well, of course I am, right? I'm covered all the way around, and you have to cross 2 arms instead of 1, so it doesn't matter how I flinch. And the other thing it does, right? So we've got 4 equilateral triangles, so we've closed things off, and no opening is bigger than another. Okay. Let's see. Let's make that number 1, I guess. 1, 2. With Jumonji, you are positioning your hands where you eliminate tells. Okay. Tells are you do something that signals that you're doing something else. Okay. So if I were doing this, right, to throw my back hand, I either have to drop the front hand, right, or I have to go around the front hand. Either way, there's this huge tell that happens long before the fist gets where it's going. So in this position, I can block with either hand and I can punch with either hand without dropping the other hand. Okay? And it allows me to keep a shield in front of me the whole time I'm going. Actually, this is the same. Okay? That hand stays in space and I walk to it. It doesn't fall and get picked back up again. I walk to that hand. So the shield that was created stays in place. Okay? So I eliminate tells, and I can block and strike easily, right? Without the tell. Okay? The shield never moves. Okay? So again, it's meant to read and redirect, not to cover and block. Right? It's to read what he's doing, force him to have to try to come in weird ways, or again, go after these, and then I'm going to redirect, right, to nail the next thing. Okay? And it creates a visual obstacle and tension that draws out the attacker. It forces them to have to fight in a different way. If I'm moving this way, then he can certainly jab through that channel. And that's why I have to bob and weave. But what's the purpose of a jab? Well, it's to hit you. No. You don't have to hit somebody with a jab. Okay? People, again, the way we translate something is gonna move things around, right? The purpose of a jab is to break your stance. It's to break your kamae. Okay? So if he throws a jab and I bob, yeah, he missed with that, but I put my body in a weird position and I have to come back from that. And this is how people fight, as though that's normal. Okay? So they're fighting from weak positions. So what do they have to do? They have to train and train and train to have quick reflexes. But if we don't break our kamae, we don't have to make up for that. And this is why most fighters, by the time they hit a certain age, they give up on fighting and they start to become negotiators, because they're not as fast as that 20-something. Okay? But if I put things in his way that force him to slow down or take the long route to get me, or to have to deal with something to be able to do the next thing. Okay? So a jab in modern fighting is the same as a ski. Okay? You know this one, right? In the old days, purpose of a ski is not to hit you. But it's really damaging when it hits. I didn't say you can't hit somebody with it. Okay? The purpose of a ski is to break your kamae. It's to make you have to deal with this thing that's coming in, and then he can nail you with the next thing. Okay? So when you're looking at your kata, like Ichimonji no kata, okay, and we're doing it the classical style where he's coming in with this ski, if your partner really understands how to do a good ski, maximizing his power line and projecting in to break you, that first move, even before the uke nagash, but with the uke nagash, is learning how to break that solid battering ram that's coming at you. Okay? The cool thing about these kamae is if this guy looks like this guy, right? I'm going to position myself so that jabbing is really difficult. Okay? It's been my experience that they tend to like jab at the hands, they try to get it to move, that kind of thing, right? There's no point in putting myself here like I'm going to tag that incoming jab. Jabs are really freaking fast. They're really hard to hit. And if I go chasing it and I miss, I'm screwed. Right? So I'm going to put myself in a position that makes that very, very difficult. Against this guy, I don't want to be in an Ichimonji or a Seigan because he can kick the arm. And most of these guys do lateral kicks. My kamae are supposed to be removing as many targets as possible from his attack. If I'm only thinking this way, and he comes around with I'm exposed. So against that kicker, I'm going to be in a different one. Okay? Everything is equidistant. He can't get me with a speed shot. Okay? This is the difference between tactical and strategic thinking and just mindlessly going along with the program. But they're not really going along with the program. They're going along with what the program looks like, and they're translating it like. Okay? They're focusing on what it looks like, and therefore it must be, instead of understanding how it works so they can use it properly to maximize the benefits. Okay? It's not the same. All right? Okay, so again, Jumonji, the Xshaped Shield, when used correctly, right? It's not dropped. It creates 4 equilateral triangles, and it also protects key points. It protects your sternum and your xiphoid process, right? So you don't get blasted that way, which will shut down your heart, right? Affect your lungs and all that, right? We're not letting the brachial plexus get nailed, okay? That kind of thing. I know it looks like the face is wide open. Stop putting your fist in front of your freaking face, right? I'll just punch your arms. You can beat the shit out of yourself. This way, okay? When he goes for that, your flinch response will take care of it. It's okay, right? Same thing if he goes low, right? We've got this. We can go in any direction easily, okay? And I know it feels uncomfortable in the beginning. So does everything a human being does from the time they're a child all the way up, okay? The trick is to integrate it into your system so it doesn't feel weird anymore. It just becomes the way you do things. This used to feel weird. It was a flexibility thing. Okay? Now, this feels weird. This feels open because my joints are too relaxed and I'm going to be trying to block with something that I don't have the right, there's not a strong enough musculature here to create a block this way. But from here, the arm's going to come up. I'm still going to hit with the same area, but it locks the shoulder in and it becomes much, much stronger. Very different, right? Okay, so weird arms, right? So let's look at Hitta, right? Hitta, we know what Hitta is, right? Hitta's stupid, man. Hitta's too open, right? Too open. It's not guarded. Okay? Who the hell fights that way, right? But what Hitta really is weaponized vulnerability. Weaponized vulnerability, okay? So it baits emotional or overconfident attackers, okay? It also, Hitta no Kamae, right, is a guarding posture, right? It's not necessarily about you, okay? This is barring somebody's way to get to something behind you. Now, if I put my hands out here, I should be able to lay a long staff on the crook of my thumb and finger here, right? Lay it across, and in the correct position, it cuts through the shoulder points, okay? Flat, level, Hitta no Kamae, right? Okay? So it's not down here. It's not, okay? This is Hachimonji no Kamae, okay? Similar, but not the same. Okay. So, but what it looks like is you're surrendering. But Hitta no Kamae is both a bodyguard position and it is a multiple attacker position. Hitta no Kamae is a double-bladed seigan, and the arms are positioned like on the foul lines on a baseball field. I don't know what a cricket field looks like, but you get the idea, right? So it's this way. It's not like this, which brings your shoulder blades in and pinches against your spine. That limits movement, and it opens your arms too much. Okay. So it's weaponized vulnerability. Think about Hitta no Kamae like an open bear trap. When he steps in, it closes on him. Okay. So Hitta no Kamae, one of the biggest mistakes that people make is the feet are too close together. Okay. And I get it. Right. Once you really understand this stuff, you can stand in Shizen, but also Shizen is not like standing in attention in the military or having your feet directly under you. Now your feet are too close together. Okay. There's a position where the outside edge of your foot or the inside edge of your foot. Let's make Tabi feet here. There's the arch. Yeah. So the inside edge of your foot, right, should be lined up with the outside edge of your hip joint. Okay. Not your badonkadonk edge. Okay. The hip joint itself. Okay. Which puts your feet a little bit farther apart than standing almost like a soldier or just standing around like everybody else does. So it's this way. So it's a little bit farther apart. Okay. And we should be able to easily move the legs without moving the torso first. Okay. I know you can't see my feet. I'll demonstrate it on Friday. Okay. So it's, but what this allows for is fluid, easy transition. Okay. And there's this really cool thing that's going on, right? So one is this, two, fluid, easy transitions. There's a really cool thing that's going on here, okay? In that you are already in the safe space, but he can't see that, okay? So from a psychological deception part, it's used to appear off guard when you're actually fully aware, okay? You look like you're kind of confused and whatnot, but you're paying attention to him, right? So, but there's this fluid, easy transition here. There's this trap thing that's going on. So what I mean by this is the hips are relaxed, the knees are relaxed, and the ankles are relaxed, so it's easy, right, to shift. You're not like a bug that just hit a windshield. Okay? It's not that kind of thing, right? What's going on here is that the feet are outside the hips, which means they're over here beside me. They're not under me, right? I didn't get nailed to a cross. Okay, that's not a knock to anything. It's just a reference point for a lot of people. My feet are out here, right, big and open, like a bullfighter's cape or something like that, right? So it's open this way, but what I've done is I've positioned my feet already where I'm going to move. So I've eliminated one step. I don't have to step before I move my targets, or I don't have to fall to move my targets. And now when I catch myself, certain muscles have to stiffen up and I'm stuck with kind of hesitant movement. Okay. So my feet are already positioned. So when he comes into center, moving is easy. If my feet are directly under me, I can't move as far. I have to step. Okay. So, oops. Right. I'm already deceptively safe. Okay. I'm the bullfighter's cape. Okay. I can clear that space in half a move because I position myself, drawn a demarcation line down my body, and now I only have to move half a body width instead of the whole thing. Okay, it's very, very different. All right. So again, we'll just continue on with this. I'll handle questions and any comments and whatnot that come in, except the flaming things. Although I should probably come up with some polite, confident, professional responses so that when people drop flaming comments, here's an example of Boryaku. Okay, in Togakureryu, if you look at the 18 skill levels, okay, you don't see heiho. Heiho is military tactics. Okay, in some lists you see heiho, right? Kukishinden, that kind of thing. Heiho is tactics for this. Okay, in ninjutsu, strategy, battlefield strategy, tactics, those kind of things are called Boryaku. Okay, Boryaku are strategies and tactics, like we're talking about here, where we are setting things up ahead of time. So he buys the bait and makes all of his decisions based on that. But he actually helps us beat him by doing what he believes is true. Okay. In Sun Tzu's Art of War, right? The enlightened general doesn't broadcast, right? He sets up his troops out of sight. He positions his troops in ways that, and he doesn't broadcast. He doesn't use the same tactics all the time, that kind of thing. So the enemy never knows where he's going to be, what lines of attack he's already set up, those kind of things. And he's certainly not, and if he has something that looks like it's coming this way, right? When a ninja implies hail, head-on battle tactics, there's some shit over here going on. Or there's some shit over here going on. Or we already dropped some poison in the water supply for this guy's camp the night before. So when they got up and rinsed and cleaned and got filled their canteens or skin pouches or whatever they had for, drinking and whatnot, right? By the time they get to the battlefield, stomach cramps and the shits are already going to be kicking in, and we're going to wear them down very, very quickly. Okay, if they didn't already die out right before they got to the battlefield. Okay? So Boryaku is not the same, right? So again, we want to look at this like we need to tie this to the psychology, or tie it to like tactical dominance. Okay, so psychology gets tied to the movement. All right. So again, here's a paraphrase that kind of brings this stuff around, right? So in a true encounter, the winner isn't the one who looked ready, right? It's the one who used the other's assumptions against him. Right? If you're not fighting the other person's, if you're not attacking the other person's mind, and you're not attacking the other person's heart, you're only fighting body to body, then whichever body is stronger, takes less damage, whatever, then okay. And that's fine. That's conventional fighting. Have at it. Okay? You do you, I'll do me. But the older we get, right, you get injured, slow down, you get surprised, you get overwhelmed by multiple attackers. Okay? So misinterpretation leads to predictable behavior, right? If I know what he perceives weak here, if I know that he thinks that's a bullshit pose, right? Or if I take up a kosei, right? And to him, kosei looks like me doing like, some weird kung fu theater thing that he's seen, okay? And that's going to cause him to drop his guard, get overconfident, and just come in at me because he doesn't think that works. Then I'm going to take up that kamae. Abso-freaking-lutely. Okay? If I take up a kamae, or I might transition through a couple of kamae. I might take up a kamae, take up a kamae, take up a kamae. What I'm watching for is his facial microexpressions. The moment I see something that looks like a smug response, like that's bullshit, or I know that, or I got that, or whatever, thank you for picking. Okay? Because just because he makes a certain assumptions about the way he would use it, I'm getting past the guy who wouldn't use it at all. It's just flat out bullshit, right? But if he makes certain assumptions about the way he would use it, he's running it through his lens. If he doesn't know how it gets used. Now, here's the other thing. This art has been around for decades now. Okay? We have to recognize that there have been a bunch of people that have gone through this and either transitioned out or thought they had enough or whatever, right? And so they stuck around more than just a little bit. they've seen it, and they probably know some techniques, they're going to be harder to beat. So how do you trick people in your own system? Right? You need to know your stuff better than they ever learned it. Okay? And that's what I'm offering people. I'm offering the stuff that was taught way back before this became just Ninpo Taijutsu. Okay? But Tatsumi Sensei teaches this stuff all the time, and people just nod. But then they go back to doing shit the same way. Okay? So, but the psychological warfare here is that if misinterpretation, right, leads to predictable behavior. Okay? And my research, my ninja research, is reading the comments that people have. I just cut right through their anger and indignation and shit like that. And what I translate out of it is, I don't know anything about that. I'm just making a freaking guess. I'm making assumptions. I'm telling you how I would beat that technique, but I just watched the video. But in real time, I wouldn't know it was coming, right? Because ego's leading, right? So, but that leads into a concept that we could call tactical camouflage, okay? Tactical camouflage. What I show you is what I want you to believe I'm doing, okay? So in Ninjutsu, among all of our kamae, find it good to drop it. Okay? So I'll give you one more kamae here. Let's do some contrast. Let's use purple, okay? So there is a kamae called Kage no Kamae. Kage no Kamae, okay? Kage, not cage, okay? Some of my screen names, Kage 36, not cage 36, okay? The K is always, and the G in Japanese is always a hard G. If the Japanese mean a J, in Romaji, we put a J, okay? Kage, okay? It's a Kyoketsu Shoge. I've heard people say kosetsu, like they've called it a shoge. It's not a shoge, okay? So kage. Kage means shadow, okay? Shadow. So what we're doing here is separating head and heart, strategy and intent, from what the body's doing. So if I take up, let's say I take up Hitta, and I'm even putting on the facial expressions, right? But I'm thinking this is a bear trap, okay? What I'm hiding, this kamae is a shadow. It's tactical camouflage, okay? It's no longer Hira no kamae. It's Kage no kamae. Because in my head and my heart, I'm this guy. So when he comes in, right, I'm ready to strike. Dude, by all means, okay? But I don't want to look like that, like, yeah, okay? That's not a shadow, okay? That's a different kamae. All of your kamae can be divided between Kage no kamae. When you first learn kamae, kokoro, koko. Let's go to kokoro no kamae. Okay? Kokoro no kamae, kamae the heart. Okay? Your kamae look exactly like you feel, which is another way to do kamae. Okay? Another way to do kamae is based on the emotional driver that's going on. Okay? If I need to break through this guy, right? Ready to go. Okay? Or, wow, I'm in trouble. Whoa, no. Okay? Or this kind of thing, right? Okay? So, kokoro no kamae, kamae the heart, right? I'm wearing my heart on my sleeve. I'm taking up this posture that mirrors what's going on the inside. Kage no kamae. Sorry, the vacuum cleaner decided it was going to start. I don't know that. Maybe it'll just turn off. That'd be cool. Anyway, right? So this is the emotive side, right? And then there is the cold, calculated, all the stuff I just covered, right? But then we've got this tactical camouflage, right? I am showing you what I want you to believe I'm doing. This is pure Kyutsu Tenkan Ho, disguising truth and falsehood, okay? So again, for student development, we've got to root out these common errors. Okay, so we have to speak to the student journey, so to speak. Okay, so first and foremost, right, we learn the Kamae so that we get the Taiden part, right, the physical, the body side of things, right. But as soon as we get that, we've got to make sure that we get our head wrapped around the idea that we can't be using the Kamae to pose. Okay, so when we're taking up Kamae physically, we need to have intent. What is the intent? What is the base principle or the idea behind that Kamae? Okay, so in Seigan no Kamae, right, it looks a certain way, but as with all Seigan, sword, spear, whatever, okay, there is this mental thing that's going on, which is, what is it? Right, it is getting me is not going to be easy. Right, you can attack me when I say it's okay, right? Because I keep this stuff. I stay on one line and I stay behind this shield. I stay behind the weapon. Okay, what's going on in the heart? Okay, the heart is projecting intent at him to keep him back, to confuse him. Okay, so right, same thing in Jumonji. Right, feeling in Jumonji is whatever you throw at me is perfectly okay. Right, but the intent here is when you throw it, I'm going to take you. Okay, because you can't get at me without crossing certain boundaries. Okay, so we then want to train with the Kamae, or we want to train the Kamae with the question, right? What do I want him to think I'm doing? Right? But before we can ask that, we should probably do some research and post some things. Post pictures of you in Kamae or whatever. What do you think? Okay, and post where people that you know are fighters will present themselves. Or the shortcut is to go to my YouTube feed or Romkey or anybody's, right? Where somebody's just bullshit, just throwing a whole bunch of trolling shit at it and ignore things, right? I'm fat, I'm bald, I'm old, whatever, okay? Get to the why the shit doesn't work, right? Why that's stupid. Why nobody should ever do that. Don't listen to this guy, man. He'll get you killed. Oh, really? Why? Okay, what's wrong with what he's doing? Then let him spell it out. He's literally telling you how he perceives things. Then you can take all that information, and then when you want somebody to think you're doing something and they seem to be that kind of fighter, you know exactly which Kamae to pull out, put in front of them. People have no idea how easy it is to control them. The more opinionated they are, the more fixated they are on style, and the more sure of themselves they are, the easier it is to control them. Take that to the bank. Okay, so the way to build true confidence, right? It's rooted not in the appearance, but in the effectiveness. We need to understand how it works, how it was designed to work. Okay, it's not just this pose. It's not the official stance of ninjutsu, or the Gyokoryu, or the Kotoryu, or whatever. Okay, the Kamae were actually designed after the strategic intent, and they were developed along a long period of time. And the arm positions and the way they're positioned, right? Their tactics, they're designed in a way to make that lineage's secrets or strategies and whatnot easier to execute on. Somebody just didn't go around just making up shit and then making techniques that could be used for. You could do this or you could do this. Okay, that's the way an infant operates. Okay, they have no idea what this is, so they just make shit up. Oh, it's a chew toy, right? It's a hammer, right? It's a right. So let's not guess. Okay, let's not guess. All right, so transitioning to Friday's masterclass. Okay, the link is going to be right down there. I should probably switch my screen now because I'm at the end of things. Oh, and by the way, I probably forgot to say it like I always do. Don't forget to like and share and help other people find this stuff. So anyway, there's the unique URL for this week's masterclass, right? Perception trap. I don't use the old one. For those of you who've been like doing master classes for a long time, used to just say Friday virtual training. I don't do that anymore because we're going to be kind of packaging these things as unique training things where folks will get a worksheet and resource, and then this, and then the Friday training as well, whether or not they went through the cycle. You guys are getting at least 2/3 of it, well, a third of it for free. Okay, but we're going to be packaging these things, so I need to make sure that everything was separate. So anyway, that's the URL. Everything's already set up. You can go get signed up. The class is $9 US. Okay, and even if you can't make it, you're going to get the recording. As a matter of fact, the people from last week, Shoshi Whistler covered for me because it was my anniversary weekend. So my wife and I were out of town, and unfortunately, nobody showed up at the dojo. So they had a discussion online about the topics, and he demonstrated some things on some training bags and whatnot that we have here. But I really wanted people to have some good technique examples. So if you signed up for last Friday's class on the Q show, there'll be another video from last night's masterclass coming to you. So I don't want people to feel like they got shorted for things. Okay. But anyway, you get all that stuff. You can do it. You can not do it. I gave you plenty of things to look for as far as mistakes and whatnot. And so here's the thing. The goal is to turn perceived weakness, his perceptions, into strategic control. But if we're focused on these things, or we're doing these Kamae in a way that weakness exists, there's no strategic control. Okay, you won't be having strategic control to more easily execute on your technique. Okay, you will have exactly the weakness that he perceives you to have. He will have the strategic control, and you will get executed. It's as simple as that. Okay, I mean, what's the worst that can happen? This is survival. What's the worst that can happen? Not you get your ass beat. This is not a fight. This is not coming from the ring. This is survival. This is Budo. What's the worst that can happen? You die. So we're all going to die anyway, right? But we shouldn't be complicit in how fast it happens. Right? All right. That's it. That's what I have. I hope I'll see you for Friday's masterclass. If I don't, no worries. You got this one. And if I don't see you between now and then, well, then I'll see you next Wednesday. Oh, for those of you who are still on the fence or whatever, it's Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. Our spring camp kicks off, right? So if you go to onlineninjaacademy.com/spring-camp, there's some options down at the bottom of it. You can do the full weekend virtually. I think there's even an option for a single day. And then there's also, if you can't do any of that, you can pre-order at a discount the raw training videos, which means there's going to be about, 10 hours or so. Over 12 hours, somewhere between 12 and 14 hours of raw video of the event. Okay, and we've got it on discount because we're not going to do more than just a little bit of editing on it. So if you can make it in for that, or just get the lessons, right? We're covering Kotoryu secrets, and we're covering Yari spear, but we're covering Yari in a way where we can take the lessons that Yari teaches to not get entangled in tight spaces and on a battlefield and shit like that, right? And integrate that into our smaller weapons and into our taijutsu to really ramp shit up, okay? So again, more hidden lessons, okay? All right, so anyway, that's what I have. I hope I'll see you, and if not, I'll catch you next time on Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. I'll see you next time.